Welcome to Simply Caroline, a podcast dedicated to women empowerment where we will discuss a bunch of different subjects such as life, parenting, love, business, money, relationships, healing, recovery, addiction, entrepreneurship, and so much more. A podcast I'll do my best to keep simple, fun, and relatable and bring you tools to help you better your life. So thank you for being here. And here's your host, myself, Caroline Blanchard. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you for being with us again this week. I have such a special guest, Keri Moreland. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. So why is Keri so special? She can read you. I always find that so interesting. When people can read others or channel information, I'm always like, is this a trait I would love to have or not? So Keri, talk to us a little bit about it. How is it to be that intuitive and this much in touch with things that are happening now and that happened in the past and all of this?
Sure. So I always say it's the gift that keeps on giving, because as time goes on and you work more on the, internal set points, your emotions, your thoughts, you see how belief systems are entwined into that. You open yourself up to different levels of vibration, which then attract new thoughts and experiences to you. And the same is true for people who can't channel or aren't a medium or anything like that. We're all intuitive. So we all have this gift, I think, built into the, our internal system. But it really started for me. I started speaking to my grandmother, who died when I was a year old, at night. And my mom was like, "Who are you speaking to all night?" And I was like, "Oh, she's a lady. She's heavy set. She has a bun on her hair and she looks like this." And her whole face just turned white as a ghost. And she's like, "That's your grandmother, Connie, on my dad's side, who I had never met." And I was about 4 or 5 years old at this time. And so she was freaked out. And my whole family, I grew up Baptist, Christian. So they, I wouldn't say they think it's the devil, but, they weren't very open to it. And then I started as a kid telling people about experiences that they had had before I was around as teenagers and whatnot. And that freaked them out too. So then I noticed I was like not being invited to as many, family gatherings. So they're like, "She will not talk about anything we want to know." It's like exposing to them. But that
I'm laughing, but that must have been hard for a child to kind of be excluded or feel so different.
Yeah, especially, and I was an only child. So,
Okay.
yeah, and dad had took off. My dad was an alcoholic and addict, who passed in 2017, but he had taken off when I was 3. And so, yeah, I really felt like an island as a child. So my friends have become my family and are to this day, because I don't speak to any of my mom or dad's side. But going back to the being able to talk to dead people situation, it was really awkward. And so I shut down a lot of those things because, you're told you're crazy, you're the alien in the room. It's like, okay, in order to fit in, I have to be somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for the majority of my life up until I'd say early 20s. I'm 34 now. So it's been quite the journey for that. When I eventually found myself working inside of a federal prison. And that's when I started really tuning into the mediumship gifts. And I would go into work and I'd feel like I was putting this suction cup to my face and I wouldn't be able to breathe going in there, because I was going from the really safe space of my home, meditating, channeling spirit, and then going to this, it's like darkly infested prison with all of these surrounding energies that are not on a vibration I want to interact with. So I was like, okay, I have to get out of here because this isn't going to work for me. And so then I left that and started experiencing this, as a full-time gift and exploring that and what it's like to work with people one-to-one doing it. So yeah, it's been quite the journey for me. And I have to say, in the beginning, it was a really lonely one for sure.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And I know the jail system a bit because my family was all working in that. And you know what? You just said something. I heard them say so often, like it's it's a harsh environment or it's heavy, but that was for normal people. So imagine for someone who can actually pick up all the energy, it must have been like extremely heavy. And yeah, thankfully you got out of there. But what was your first experience of channeling with someone who actually wanted you to do it and wanted to know more?
So my first experience was actually a complete skeptic. Well, I'll start before that, because my first experience was actually with a stranger at a gas station. So I was standing in in the middle of Florida, and I'm standing in line at a gas station. I'm standing with a friend of mine, and I feel like this notion to look behind me. There's like 4 or 5 people in line behind me, and I'm like, I instantly get this image of this small statured woman with darker hair. And I turn around and she's there. And I'm like, oh no, I have to tell her something. And I don't want to tell her something because then she's going to think I'm a freak. And like, I was going through all of those, fear defining moments of my past. And so then I heard 3 sons, and I got that she had 3 sons. One was deceased, one was in the prison system, which at the time I was working in. I had just started there. And then the other one was living with her. And I said, the one in the prison system is experiencing some sort of, I don't know if it was a medical condition, but I got like he was injured or an illness, but he was trying to reach out to her and she wasn't responding. Their communication, I saw somebody like show this gap, like there was a time where they weren't speaking, and that he was trying to get a hold of her for a reason that was really urgent. And so I told my friend, I was like, so this is what I'm getting. And she's like, well, you need to tell that person that. That's, their mother. Like, you need to say something. And I was like, oh no. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to get the courage to say it. So I waited for her to get out of line, and I'm like, hi, you don't know me, but do you have 3 sons? And then I, asked her the defining questions that I got to verify that it was in fact the right person that I was channeling. And she's just like, yes, yeah. Do you know my boys? Do you know them? And I was like, no, but the one in jail did. And she's like, oh, I haven't spoken to him in 8 months. And she started crying, and I was like, you need to get a hold of him. He needs to tell you something. There's an injury or there's some sort of medical condition that it's very serious. And she's like, I will. And she tried to talk to me more, and I was like, I gotta go. And I ran away. But that was my first experience, like actually doing it for somebody. Now, as far as the wanted, my first experience was with a skeptic, and it was a friend of a friend of a friend that I had never met from Oregon. And she actually had, her mother had passed, her father had passed, and her grandmother had passed, which all had come through. And I literally remember sitting there in the meditation, and I was so afraid to be wrong. I think that's what holds us, a lot of us, back from exploring our intuitive gifts, especially like talking to people who are deceased or, disembodied spirits, because we're like, if I'm incorrect, I'm going to look like a lunatic. But they came through, and I'm like, this is what I got. And she's like, oh yeah, all 3 people are deceased. And I brought up a memory that she had. I guess her parents used to own a Christmas tree farm, and I had mentioned her mom was walking with her through this layer of pine trees, huge pine trees, and there was these birds, and she was running around, and she's like, oh yeah, that was my memory from my parents owning a Christmas tree farm. But I mean, I knew this person's first name and email address. I didn't even have a photo. I was like, I don't want to know anything else. I wanted to go in totally blind. And she's like, this information is like, it's changed my life, because I didn't think people, I thought people were whack jobs. I didn't think they could really do this. And I was like, well, I didn't really know I could do it to this extent either, but apparently I can. So that was my first-ish time, both professionally and kind of off the books.
Well, that's awesome. And I'm saying it's awesome. Again, I'm not sure how much I would like to have that or not, because I'm a very empath. I'm an empath. And like sometimes if I sit with someone who's sad, even if they fake it very well, I walk out of there and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just want to go cry somewhere. So it's a gift, but it's also, something that you carry with yourself. But so I get that your specialty, I should say, is really to channel dead people.
Yeah, and I like to say spirits. Yeah.
Spirit.
That probably sounds better. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I use it because, a lot of people know that. I mean, it's a pretty, blunt term everybody will understand.
Yeah, I went for the gore. No, but do you also consult people to what they are now and how they can change what's coming without channeling someone who has passed?
Yeah, as far as like, you mean in a prophetic way or like a predictive way. So yeah, I'll speak a little bit about that because I think that's really interesting. It's not something that's talked about a lot. So every medium is a psychic, but not every psychic is a medium. A psychic is somebody who sees ahead, right? They can see kind of like the trajectory of where the energy is taken. That's what's called a prediction. And then they give you that message. When they're good at it, they read the energy correctly. When they don't, they're reading a scenario that may or may not happen because that person is in an ever-changing vibrational state. Every thought we think is a different vibration and attracts another different thought and experience to us. So somebody who's doing inner work, well, they're going to be harder to predict for because they have a myriad of options available to them. Somebody who's stuck in an older story, who's kind of doing the same thing over and over again, they're going to be easier because they're not doing the internal work, right? So their predictions are likely to manifest and the other ones not so much. So that's kind of why I stay away from predictions. I have predicted before. One of them was my ex-boyfriend's suicide, accidental overdose. But, well, kind of. But in any case, we'll talk about that later. Yeah, it's predictions are kind of one of those tricky things. So I stay away from that. But as far as how it relates to their current relationships is interesting because the deceased or spirits will bring in information that ties them vibrationally to an old story that started in childhood with that specific person that they're currently repeating in their current relationships, whether it's friends or family dynamics or, a romantic partner. So that's how I use that kind of information to tie into their present to see, like, specifically, this is energetically what needs to be corrected or up-leveled, vibrationally changed in order to attract something different. So that's how it kind of ties together for me personally.
Yeah. And thank you for explaining that. And I just realized I didn't even talk about the subject that we were really talking about because now you are an expert in relationships and you're actually helping people and guiding them. And you do use your gift to do that. So for all my listeners out there, sorry, that's what I'm talking about. So Keri, how can you fix me? No, I'm joking. How do you use that really in a day-to-day basis to help people who will seek your help, seek your advice to say, okay, I don't know, I've been single for like 2 years. Every single relationship that I have is messed up because of whatever. Please help me. So what's your role in that? Like,
yeah, where do I start with that?
Yeah.
Well, and of course, every case is a little bit different, but I'll use my life as a perfect example of what not to do in relationships. No, but I was attracting partners. So I grew up with a narcissistic mother who was severely abusive. I was fat. I was stupid. I was this. Like always, I heard that my whole life. And so I ended up attracting partners because I had that belief system and the energy around worthlessness that I'm worthless. And we all have that going on some level. Mine was really in the garbage for that, So I'm attracting partners who are also narcissists. And so it's the empath narcissist dynamic. Empaths, or people who are very intuitively open, often do attract people who are manipulative and want to take advantage because they see somebody with a bleeding heart, so to speak, and are like, oh, that's, prime territory right there. So I was going through a series of friendships and bosses I attracted that I noticed the same kind of dynamic that my mother had. And then I ended up attracting a romantic partner who was really my mother on paper as far as personality goes, like really enticed me in. And then it ended up being a really abusive relationship. When we separated, the night we separated, he had something to drink, and then he took whatever drug he took, and he was trying to take my car, and I said, no, I have to work tomorrow morning. And we got in a huge argument, and there was some words exchanged, and then before I knew it, I was being beaten and I was raped by him, and then 7 hours of torture. He broke glass over my face. It was I literally looked around the room and was like, oh, I'm gonna die. And that was a defining moment for me to realize, like, oh, this relationship I attracted because of that old pattern that I'm worthless. So things will show up in people's life that what shows up for you tells you where you're at and what you're currently attracting with your thoughts and beliefs around it. So I pinpoint where they're at, like a thought will drop on, I use the Abraham Hicks emotional guidance scale. It will drop on that scale and it will tell me where they're at and what they're allowing into their life as far as that current relationship goes. And if I have that information, plus what the deceased gives me, maybe some, people come through on their end for that. And then also their relationship and what they're manifesting and they're currently experiencing with that partner, it will tell me everything I need to know to get them to a new state of vibrating, a new state of being and attracting.
Thank you for sharing that. Like,
Sure.
my heart breaks for you. I'm sorry you went through that. And I'm proud of you that you got out of it, because it can also become a cycle that you start spinning in and don't know how to spin out anymore and get out of that. So congrats for
Absolutely.
finding the strength to get out of that. So your example here is pretty extreme.
Yeah.
Because I can hear listeners now saying, well, yeah, when you get beaten and tortured for 8 hours, clearly there's an issue and you think about it after. But that's more in the exceptions. Most of us will have those kind of relationships that, maybe with a narcissist, maybe with someone who, cheats on us or it treats us poorly. But we realize that, my goodness, I'm always with that type of guy. Not when it starts at the beginning, because, every relationship at the beginning is amazing. But after a few years, like, I was married twice, and I can see now with hindsight the parallels and the differences. So I know where I put my foot down and I was just like, that I'm not dealing with anymore. But I know also where I didn't put my foot down and I was just like, I let it in again. And, the second time was, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to compare. But
Yeah.
I grew in between. I changed. I was a different person. So it was different relationships, but there was still some of the same basics. And, we talk about here a marriage, but there's also quite often it's the same type of friends you will attract. It's the same type of people that you surround yourself with. But like I say, it's not as dramatic as you. So how do what's my question here? Like, I want to say how.
There's a lot to pick at.
Yeah, I know. But so for someone who hasn't gone to that dramatic place, but kind of feels like, do I need to see someone for that? Because, like, what's the point of, like, okay, I need to see someone and not a relationship, someone like you?
Well, yeah. Well, even on the most basic level, I think a lot of us attract now, and I'm going to be really candid with everybody. Like, I'm not in the highest vibrational point of attracting a relationship either. I've been single 5 years and I've dated around, right? And I'd noticed a pattern in the last year that I was attracting unavailable men, emotionally unavailable. So they'd be single and whatever, but once it started getting into those serious conversations of commitment, they want to hightail it out. And that's, a lot of psychologists will say, oh, it's a disassociative type attachment style and going into all that, which is more of the scientific explanation of it. But it's also people who have often had experiences growing up like I did. So instead of it going to the abuse extreme, well, it's in an emotional abuse for them on an internal level, which then bleeds out into their relationships and who they attract. So do you see how that, like, I'm attracting better, but I'm attracting now the emotionally unavailable types who come in and just don't really want to commit. They want everything that the relationship gives them. They want the trappings of the relationship, the physical intimacy. They, want to come over and hang out. They want to go out and take you out on dates. They want to wine and dine you, but they don't want to have you as a girlfriend, even though they're not seeing anybody else. It's too much for them. So that's kind of, it's both extremes in either side of the scale.
There's a lot of that, though.
Yes, there is, right? It's the majority of what we all deal with, or the being cheated on. The being cheated on is an interesting thing because that also goes into the worthlessness category. We're emanating from a vibration of we're not good enough. But we're also taking our thoughts and we're putting our attention on that as a fear. And so there's more momentum around the fear of that than the actual, the joy of it not happening, than the safe emotional space of it being a loyal partner. Our mind is more often on the place where, oh, they're going to cheat. My last partner cheated on me. Everybody cheats, men cheated, a whole women cheat, whoever you're dating, they're going to cheat. So we fostered that thought, and a thought is just, a belief is just a thought we've kept thinking, right? So we've fostered that thought so long that it's become a belief that inevitably that person will cheat on us, even if they weren't a cheater with anybody else, because that's where our attention has spent the most time. And that's where we have the most vibrational momentum. Wow. So that's how I see those things.
So how do you help someone to get out of this pattern?
It's basically hearing their thoughts about their everyday situations. We start in specific containers of situations, right? Mm-hmm. But it can be one mantra that's on repeat. That, about a circumstance that happened to them. What is your take on that circumstance? I want to peel out the emotional layers of whatever they're telling me. And then I can pinpoint where they're at on a vibrational scale and get them to up-level that through new patterns of thinking. But what's tricky about this work is that we hear a lot of it like, oh, just say positive affirmations or just change the thought. Well, that's all good and well, but that's not realistic. We're not able, if we take our attention away from it altogether and get on a different subject matter, then often those things work out because our energy is being elevated through other means and we're not focused on that at all. Mm-hmm. So in an extreme case, it's getting off the subject altogether, which will change the vibration and the thought that you'll attract about that when you come back to that subject. And that's it's a little bit confusing, but going general with the subject, get out of the specifics. A lot of people are so emotionally, anger is a super heavy vibration or rage or disappointment or depression. That's really low on the end of the scale. You're not going to get to joy and freedom and knowledge overnight. That's too extreme. You have to go up incrementally. So the next one up from being mad at somebody would maybe to be a little bit jealous or blaming. Oh, it's your fault. That's fine. Blame away because it's still higher than rage. So that's how I work with people to get them up that scale and then make changes in their life that they will see evidence of.
That's amazing. And you know what? Another thing that you said that I feel is thrown around a lot these days is, well, change your vibration. You know what? I've tried sometimes to sit there and be like, oh, I need a different vibration. When you're not knowledgeable about it, it's, it's almost like if you would say, change the song you're playing. But when you're not knowledgeable about it, like, what's the basics to even change a vibration or be in a better vibration or.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's funny. Oh, so I'll bring up an example. A friend of mine, his brother is deceased. He called me and he's, he knows that I channel spirits and he's like, I don't understand. I've had a dream about him. He died years ago, almost probably 10 years ago by now. I've had a dream about him one time and I really need him and I really need to talk to him. And he knows that oftentimes, when we go into dream states, we're the most open. So people who aren't intuitive will have dreams about deceased loved ones. I'm sure most people listening to this has had some sort of experience with that. And why that is because you're in a state of allowing when you're sleeping. You have no resistance to the subject that you're thinking about. And I said, you're focused on the lack of him coming through. And so that's what you're getting more of. You're not getting him coming through because you're putting resistance on the track. So when you go to sleep at night, you're still not in a place of allowing because you've fallen asleep thinking about how, oh, I have to do this. We can't control our thoughts through willpower. And that's what those positive affirmations always get wrong. It's like, it's not just, oh, I changed this to that overnight. No, it takes some internal work and some rigorous self-inventory, which is always helpful to do with a mentor or somebody that knows, can dig into it well. But I said, it's your attention on the lack of him not coming that's having him not come. So get off the subject before you go to sleep. Don't think, come and talk to me and, cajole him in coaching him into coming from the other side. He's not going to do it that way. He can't. You're not on the vibrational level to receive him there. So it works the same in our outer world with relationships or any subject matter. Money is the same. If you're looking at your bank account and you're like, I want to be rich, but I'm broke, I'm broke, I'm broke, I'm broke. Guess what record's going to keep playing? The I'm broke record. The I'm broke. The I don't have any money. The I'm angry, I don't have any money. I'm jealous of other people who have money. And then money never comes to you. You're not in a vibrational place of reception.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I even heard, like, if you want to do a affirmation, you need to be on the right vibration. So again, that vibration part. And it's okay. Like, I do think that if we do put in the work, eventually we too will understand. But you're right about that. The other thing that I wanted to go to is that, you help in relationships, not by necessarily, we were joking before the podcast saying you should be a matchmaker, but wouldn't have a big pool of men to go through.
Yeah.
You don't know, where they are and whatever. So the idea when you're looking into improving your relationship or having a new relationship or finding someone is not necessarily about finding the right person. And I think that that's where a lot of us are, like, how often I've been told, like, well, just think about your ideal guy. I can't even say what my ideal guy is.
Me either.
I just want him to be nice, but everyone's nice at some point. So it's not about that. It's about fixing you to get to a level where you will attract the right person. And talk to that about a bit, because I know that there's probably people now, thinking like, oh, finally I found someone who can tell me which one.
Find me my soulmate.
Yeah. Which ironically, if I would meet someone that was totally bad for me and you would see it and tell me, I would tell you to get lost. Most of girlfriends,
exactly,
that's what you do. We're like, no, he's not the right one. And you're like, when do you know? to end up like a few years after, like, oh my gosh, should have listened. So people, even if we tell you which one is the right one, you would not listen. So go ahead and just talk about, why is it important to change you first?
Yeah, and I want to give you a little bit of problems there on the, I want to give you just a little bit of tease there on the fix yourself, because we're not broken and there's nothing to fix, but we do need to be more aware of how our thoughts make us feel. And it's not about the soulmate is free shipping, where's my soulmate? Or there's one person out there for us. We have a million soulmates. You could be my soulmate. My next, client could be my soulmate. We have many soulmates. And that relationship that comes in that everybody's like, no, girl, don't date him. Nope, nope, nope. But we need to, because that whole experience will teach us how to up level to the next vibration, because we've attracted him from an old one, and our emotions about that we experience in the relationship with that person will tell us everything about where we're at with our next partner. So it's really about tuning into how you feel, how you're going to feel. What's your ideal, not person? It's not, oh, I want a 6 foot tall, dark and handsome. I do. If anybody's out there listening, I'm just kidding. And he's got to be a doctor or this or that. All of that stuff is frivolous. It means nothing. What you have to tune into is, how do I want to feel in the relationship? And paint the vision, make it like a vision board in your own mind. Some people are better in an arts and crafts way with that. Put images that inspire feelings of joy and bliss and freedom and all of those good feeling thoughts that we want to have with a partner. And then the partner who matches that feeling will show up. That's exactly what shows up. It has less to do with the person, the outer person, and the trappings of reality that come with them, so to speak. It's more about the feeling.
Yeah, and I can confirm that, because I had Brad Pitt as a picture for a long time, and it just never happened. And then I found out he's 5'8", so really would not happen anyway.
Off the list anyway.
Yeah, all frivolous. But no, you're right. And I like how you put that, into think about the feeling that you want to have. And quite often, especially when there's self-worthiness issues, that's where we cannot connect that feeling, because
absolutely,
we want to feel good, but it's almost like we don't know how to feel good. And I love that you said, you don't have to fix yourself because you're not broken. You're absolutely right. And unfortunately, that's a term that we use quite often, like I need to fix this.
It's
But it's not
conditioned.
that.
Yeah.
It's just like now when I'm talking about self-worthiness, if it's not there and you don't know how to feel it, I was going to say again, like this is something you need to fix, but it's just something you need to be aware of and
Right.
work on, discover what is that feeling of feeling like the princess in the room, because a lot of women don't know actually what it really is. We think it's Cinderella, once she,
Right. We grew up with that storyline. Yeah.
but we don't really know what it really feels inside. Like, what is it to be the number one in the room? You know?
Yeah. And the
So
basis of life is freedom and the purpose of life is joy, to quote my favorite teacher, Abraham Hicks again. But that is what we want to feel free in relationships. We don't come to this planet to be like, and I'm not hitting on anybody who's been married or wants to get married or marriage is for you. I will never get married though, because I believe it's a social institution and it's a method of control. And that's fine if you believe something else. And I'm not saying it's all bad. It depends on your thoughts around that specific subject. But oftentimes it gets us into the illusion of thinking there's only one right person or right solution for us, or there's an end all be all. And that's just not realistic to human being, so we have to think, okay, I want to feel free. I want to feel joyous. I want to feel secure, but you could arrange that into different terms, whatever works for you. But those are the feelings you want to really tune into in your vision and actually sit there and feel them, feel what it's like, be in a memory with this person. They don't have to have a face in your dreams, and then they'll show up and you'll realize all those qualities that you manifested in your vision have become a person in reality.
So if you don't know what the feeling is, how can you give us tips on how to actually, I want to say embody it, even if we're not really sure what it is? Like, let's say you said secure. And for me, like now I do feel secure, but it's a feeling that I battled for years that I didn't even know what it was to feel secure. So you would have told me like, well, just imagine feeling secure. I would have been like, well, what is
How?
that? How do you do it when you don't know?
Yeah. So in that instance, well, and sometimes you can take relationship as a subject matter if that's what you're on. But a lot of times I'll coach somebody into saying, well, let's think about another subject in which you felt really good about. It doesn't have to be like, for instance, I went to the store, got a scratch off, and I won $1,500 one time. So how did that experience make me feel? Really good. So that's what, it doesn't have to be on that same subject matter. So I would task them to go back to a past memory in which they experienced the feelings of freedom and joy, and that, in that instance, it's financial security or security for that moment. It doesn't have to be like, oh, generational wealth, or I've come into $1 billion to feel secure, right? But you're still fostering that feeling of, oh yes, it's a win. I feel X, Y, and Z about that. It doesn't have to be on the same subject matter. That's what's really interesting about it.
That's awesome. So Keri, to finish here, because I feel like you have some good tips on how to keep your vibrations high, like on a daily basis. What's your routine or your go-to to feel better? And because we all need to feel better here and there, to feel better, to keep your vibrations high, and be that person that you want to attract.
So in the mornings, I get up, I make coffee, I feed my cat because he will not let me leave that kitchen without putting something in his dish. So, he needs to be paid first. And then I go to the couch and I put some incense or sage. I light some of that and get my environment. I'm an aesthetic person and I love the smells and the touches of textures. And so, whatever works for you in that, but get your environment squared away. And then I'll sit down and meditate. I use the Vortex CD, which is an old work of Abraham Hicks. They have relationship, they have general well-being, they have finances, and they have physical well-being on there. And you can do any of those meditations. I normally just do the general one in the morning. So I'll sit down, that'll be about 15 minutes. And then after that, I write out my day as if it's already happened on a sheet of paper. So I'll write how I want to feel and what's going to happen and who I'm going to meet with and how it's going to go, as if it's the end of the day, but I'll do that in the beginning. And then I put it in what's called my creation box. I just, fold it up and I put it inside there as if, okay, it's done. And then I go about my day. And then normally I'll end it with a meditation as well. Something just, even if it's just music before I go to sleep. But that really helps center me in both regards in the beginning. I would encourage people, get a meditation practice. That's what helped me open up to all of my mediumship gifts, was meditating, and do it in the morning. Why? Because when we're in that dream state, we're on like kind of a neutral playing field. And so when you do that right when you get up, you can still change your vibration for the rest of the day. Whereas if you go about your day and you have a crap day and it's just one thing after another, well, you've already got a momentum going about it being not so good. So it's going to be harder to up level yourself at that point. So do it in the morning, people. I know it's like, oh, I don't have 15 minutes. If you have time to shower and brush your teeth, you have time to meditate. Just take it for you. Have that be your non-negotiable.
See, that's part of the self-worthiness.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Take that 15 minutes, get up earlier if you
take
need
it.
But we're not used to blocking off time to emphasize on us. So, right. But it's important. And I keep giving the advice and not doing it. I will do it in 2023, just because, I've always been scared of meditation because for me, it stresses me, which is kind of funny. But, I started in the forest, but now I just need to bring it down to having it in a time and space that I choose, not just when I go walk out in the forest. But Keri, it was super nice to meet you, and I will bring you back on the podcast because I know you have beautiful insights on different subjects that I really want to touch, and you're just lovable. But
thank you so much.
First of all, where can people reach you?
They can find me at thenuminousnudge.com. My email, everything is on there that they would need to know to find me, to work with me, to you can book a personal reading or a channeled reading if working with me is not in your time frame right now. So the Numinous Nudge, I have an Instagram and a website, and my YouTube channel is in the works, so be on the lookout for that. I'm going to share tidbits of coaching and raising your vibration and kind of like what we did here today.
Awesome. And I will put all the information with the podcast. So what would you leave people with, this one thing that you want them to absolutely, remember or work on, or a good tip, this one thing that you want to leave them with?
I think I'm going to go back to the last subject we talked about, which was filling your own cup. You can't offer somebody a drink from a well that's empty. If you have nothing to give, you can't, become rich enough or poor enough to help somebody else become rich. You can't become healthy enough or sick enough to become somebody else, to have somebody else become well. You can't give without having anything to give in your cup. You have to make sure that it's full. That's taking the time every day to fill your cup up, meditate, journal, walk outside, do whatever you have to do, pet your cat, pet your dog, love your family, and loving thoughts about yourself will come to you. Like attracts like, that which is like unto itself is drawn. That's the law of attraction. So life will unfold in miraculous ways if you fill your cup up first.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
That's amazing advice. And my microphone is way too close. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you. And to everyone who is listening to this, thank you so much for being there. And I will see you all next week. Keri, see you soon.
Yes, very soon. Thank you so much.